All right, game developers, it is day number four. Day number four, we're going to wake up our brains just by taking a look at what we did yesterday. I'm going to export and test by hitting this button, or going to test and then export and test. And what we had done yesterday is that we had gone ahead and created two different types of monsters that are moving around the screen. And we also changed how the HUD performed. We have two different sort of very similar AIs, but they're slightly different ones, moves and stops and starts. The other guys just continue to sort of move and change random directions. So awesome. We basically have a way to lose, because if I run into them, I lose a life. If I lose into them again, I lose another life. If I run into something again, I die and the game restarts. Okay, awesome. So that's where we're starting today. We now want to create a way to sort of advance to our next level. And there's a couple of different ways that we can do that. We're going to see if we can do them both today in this 20 minutes. So again, turn on your brains. We are going to exercise our brains for 20 minutes. You can do this. If we just keep this up for a month, we are going to have such a strong understanding of NES Maker, of developing NES games, that we're going to be able to do all kinds of cool stuff. So without further ado, let's jump in. I'm going to show you the easy way to go to a different screen, and I'm going to give you a caveat if you're working with like a scrolling platformer or something like that. So please pay attention to that. We're going to use warps to go from one screen to another. And what we're going to do first is I'm going to make a second screen. So I'm in my underworld or my overworld. And I'm going to click on another screen, and you can sort of see I have the ghost image of the screen next to it over here. I can create a second screen over here the same way I created the first. So I just grab the tile. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that I know that this is a second screen. So I'm going to do this. 2. Roman numerals are fun. Yay. Okay. So I've got a big 2 there. So I'm sure that I know that this is a second screen. I could even, maybe I could do this. I don't know. Will it still look like a 2? Sure, kind of. So, and I'm going to have my character appear sort of right in this area. Now I'm going to have to go to collisions. Remember we did this. I went to solid, and I changed my name to solid, no, really solid, by using labels, if you remember that. And I'm using the 0 key to paint these collisions. And I'm going to paint these in here as well. So now I've got a second screen. And it's very easy for me to start on this screen. If I just turn this off and I right click and I place my player and now I test my game, I'll start on the screen and it'll work as expected. But I don't want to start on the screen. I want to go to this screen. So come back over. I could use my arrow keys to go back and forth if I've got this selected, go back and forth between screens. Right click, place player, and I want to go to this screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a warp tile. I'll make like a little door. So I'm going to go to Pixel Editor, open up my background, and I'll use the purple maybe because that kind of, well, I don't know. Don't forget I can go to Enable Palette Translation. I can see it through whatever palette that I'm looking at. And maybe what I'll do is I'll do something like this. I'll make this like a brownish color. And then what I can do is, oh, no, you know what? Yes, this is exactly what I'll do. So I'm going to make a grid, and I'm going to make an outline black, and inside that black, I'm going to make it brown, and then inside that brown, I'm going to make it black again, like this, and I'm going to make the black extend all the way down, like this, so it kind of looks like a door, and maybe I could even add those all the way down like that. And then I'll use white to sort of look like it's going somewhere, something like that. That kind of looks like an open door-ish thing. I don't know. It's not very good. But again, these are placeholder assets. It doesn't really matter. Save the BMP, come back to my overworld, go to my first level, and I might have to go and come back just so that I make sure that it appears. There we go. I've got a door. I'm going to put my door up over here. Now, I'm going to make this a warp tile. And the way I make it a warp tile, I'm going to show you a couple different tricks. First of all, same thing. Collision, I can go to warp tile. I could just do that like I would expect, and I could hit 0 and use that. Okay. Or if I just need to quickly spot change a tile, I can hit escape, and I don't see any more. You notice if I have a tile selected, I get this ghost image of it. If I hit escape, I don't have any ghost image of it selected. I have no tile selected. I'm going to right click on the tile I want to change, modify attribute, and change it to warp tile. And if I want to check my work, I turn around collisions right there. As I can see, it's 3. Or even if I put my mouse over it, you'll see up here, it tells you what kind of tile it is. It's a warp tile. So what I want is I want to go to the next screen over to my right. If I look at my overworld, I want to go to this screen right here. And I could look up here. It's basically a grid X 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 15. And then 0, 15. So I want to go to my X will be 1 and my Y will be 0. That's the screen I want to go to. The first column number 1 and row number 0. Okay, so I'm going to come back to the screen that where my warp tile lives, where my door lives, and I'm going to tell it where I want this screen to go, which was X1, Y0. Go to my screen info. Okay, so in my screen info, at the very bottom, it says warp out screen. Don't do this. Don't do anything with the warp in screen. In fact, I don't even ever want you to touch this first row here, where it says warp info. Don't even touch this. We're going to do this a different way. But warp out screen, this is where I'm going to tell it where I'm going to go. So if I change this to 1, 0, now it matches the screen that I want to go to. So I'm going to hit OK. And that's going to take me again to 1, 0. Now I'm going to go to the screen. Now, where do I want them to show up? I'm going to make them show up right here. So I'm going to right click, set warp in location. That'll make me appear right there. If I look at my screen info, that's set this right here. That's what this first field does. This is the warp in location. Like if I end up on this screen warping from somewhere else, it's going to put me at that tile position. This is what warps out. So on this screen, I am warping out to 1, 0. On this screen, I'm warping into this position, which was 7 over and 5 down or something like that. All right, so let's see if that works. This is the easy way to do warps to sort of advanced stages. Awesome. Get around these bad guys, and boom, I'm on the next screen. Look at that. All right, so that's really cool. If you forget to set the warp in location, you might end up with this, because if I set my warp in location off the screen here, which is not going to let me do. If I set my warp in location to 0, 0 for a second, which is what it'll be by default, it'll warp me to the corner of the screen, and that might do some crazy weird stuff because it's off of the playable area. Oops, it's off of the playable area of the screen. So we get like weird things happening, and sometimes it could like look like it's filtering through a bunch of different screens. In this case, it just drew me off the screen. So make sure you right click and set the warp in location so we know where he's going to appear. And if you want to double check where that is, you can check screen info. That's where it is. Okay, enough about that. So that's one way that we can warp between one screen to another. But in this kind of game, I mean, we have sort of a Pac-Man-y style game, right? So we might want to make something else where like I go to the screen if I've collected all of the prizes, or if all the prizes are collected, the door appears somewhere, or something like that, right? So that's going to take place in the prize tile. And it helps to really sort of know what it is and the mechanics that you want to have happen. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to be looking at a bunch of scripts for references. And for right now, I'm going to, every time I collect one of these prizes, I'm going to have it look at all of the tiles. And it's going to take a second for it to do. I'm going to have it loop through and look at. We're going to write some code today. I know it's terrifying. We're going to write some code. We're going to have it look at every single position to see, hey, is there a diamond there? And if there's no diamond there, then it's going to use the warp to the next screen. So to do that, I need to look at where this guy collides with the diamond. Now, don't worry if you don't know a lot of assembly. I'm going to walk you through it. We are going to open up our script settings. And if you've never done any coding before, we're going to walk through this as easy as I can make it. I'm going to scroll down. And again, I highly recommend that you download Notepad++ and you set it so that your text files, your ASM files, open with Notepad++. If you do, when you hit the edit button, it'll open in Notepad++. Okay? So right now what's happening is it changes the tile at the collision and it adds to the score. And it did play a sound, but we commented that out. I want to make a new version of this script, and I want to make my own sort of amendments to the script. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Save As. And I'm going to put it in the same place. And it's good to remember where it is. If I look here, here's my root folder right here. Game, mod, maze base tiles. So if you need to, take a snapshot of that, but you should be able to remember. I go inside game maze bases. We're working on a maze game, and we're working on tiles. So you should be able to remember it logically, but if you can't, just take a picture of the screen. I'm going to make this called mine. Prize maze base mine. I'm going to hit save. Okay, so you can see it changed the name here, but I'm still set to the original maze base over here in my script settings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this. I'm going to change which script this is pointing to. I'm going to double click on 4.5. Remember, game mod maze base tiles. That's the thing I told you to remember. And you'll notice, check it out. There's your script right there. Prize _ maze base mine. If I double click on that, now we've got that. I want to make sure that this is working. When I run into tile type number 5, it's going to run into my script. Now, before I get too far doing all kinds of crazy things, how about I do this? JMP space reset. Anytime you ever want to just check to see if a piece of code is being hit, if it's reaching a certain point, we're going to do this, JMP reset. That's the equivalent of pressing the reset button on your NES. You will absolutely notice that something happens. If this doesn't happen, if it doesn't reset, we know that for some reason, this piece of code is never being hit. So I'm going to write JMP reset, all capitals, and I'm going to save that. So either go to File Save or Control S, depending on your text editor. I'm going to close this out. I'm going to come back over here. When I touch any of the prizes right now, it should reset. So let's check that out. This is just a test to make sure that this is working. And it is. The game reset. Okay. Now I can go back over. And that's not what I want to do. I want to check to see. Notice if I put these semicolons, I can write comments. So I'm going to check to see if any tiles are a prize tile. And we have to remember which number prize tiles were. So I'm going to come back over here. You don't have to, but if I remember 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I need to compare every tile to the number 5 and see if it's number 5. And here's how I'm going to do that. There are 240 tiles on the screen. There are 16 across, 15 down, for a total of 240. So I need to check 240 tiles. They're all stored in a collision table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a mailman. Now, it's going to be the letter Y, but I don't want to get you confused as to X and Y positioning. So I'm not going to call it Y. I'm going to call it Yanni. Okay, so I have X and Y registers that I could use for this kind of behavior, but that gets really confusing because sometimes I'm talking about X and Y position. So when I talk about X and Y, the mailmen, X and Y, the registers, I'm going to call them Xavier and Yanni. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to load LD Yanni. So I'm going to load Y space with the number 0. That's a hashtag $00. That's a hex value 0. Okay. Now I am going to put a minus sign and say do loop. And I have to spell it just the right way. It doesn't matter how I spell it, but later when I use it again, I'm going to have to use it. What we're going to do is we're going to create a loop that's going to check every single collision starting with 0. And so at the end of or right here, I could say, I'm going to tab. I like to do this. This is my way that I do it. Enter down, tab in. I know that everything in this tab is going to have to do with what's going on in this loop. So what I want to do is I want to load Aloysius, which is A. He's my third mailman. He's the one who can look at a memory address, and I can manipulate it and stuff like that. We'll do an assembly language primer soon. But just to make this really quick, we're going to load Aloysius, load A, with collision table, comma, Y. All right. So then I'm going to enter down, and I'm going to compare that, CMP. I'm going to compare the value. And if I want to use a hex, if I'm not comfortable with using hex yet, I want to use a decimal number. If I just write a hashtag, I can now write a decimal number. So like I said, there are 240 tiles on this screen, 0 to 239. So the last one that I could possibly do would be 239. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to first compare this to the number 5. Is it 5? Is it tile type number 5? Is it this? Is it a prize? If it is, I'm going to say yes, prize. So that means there were still prizes on the screen. Branch if equal to this yes prize label. So if this was equal to 5, I'm going to branch somewhere in the code. Where am I going to branch? To somewhere called yes prize. What's yes prize? Haven't written it yet. Before I forget, I'm going to enter down a few times and I'm going to write yes prize. Well, okay, if I branched, if it's equal to yes prize, to 5 to this place, then that means this is what happens if I did not branch, if it was not equal. So if collision table 0, comma 0, this first collision tile right here, if that's not equal to 5, I'm going to end up here in my code. If it was equal to 5, I'm going to end up here in my code. So right here, I'm going to say, nope, it wasn't 5. And what I want to do is I want to check the next tile. So if collision table, comma y, so if y was 0, this would be this place. If y is 1, it would be this place. If y is 2, it would be this place. If y is 3, it would be this place. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 15, 16, 17, 18, etc. Okay? So I'm going to increase the y. If I'm going to compare what's in y to 240, because I'm going to check 240 tiles. Okay? If it wasn't 5, I'm going to check the next one. If that wasn't 5, I'm going to check the next one. If that wasn't 5, I'm going to check the next one until I get to the 240th one. And if it is not equal to 240, I want to keep looping. And at this point, y has been increased by 1. So I'm going to keep looping, do loop. All right, so now I've got this light loop going. Okay, what if we're done? What if it is equal? So this branched, if not equal to 240, to do loop. Okay, awesome. What if it was equal? Then what do I do? Well, if it was equal to 240, that means I have checked every single place, and I have found no prizes. No prizes found, which means, what do I want to do? Think about what we're trying to make happen. I am trying to warp to the next screen. Warp to the next screen because I got all prizes. That's what's happening right here, okay? We're going to come back to that. For right now, though, if I want to check to see if a piece of code has been written, we talked about this. It's JMP reset. We're going to actually change this to warp in a minute, but right now I can say jump reset. Okay. So if it found a prize, it's just going to keep, that's done. If any of these were a prize, it's going to say yes prize, and it's not going to do the loop anymore. It's now out of the loop. So it won't ever get to this point. If any of those tiles were a prize, then it would jump down to here. If any of them were equal to 5, it would jump down here. It wouldn't even check the rest. It would just say, "Yep, never mind. We're not ready to go to the next screen yet." And it would go here. If nothing on the screen is a prize tile, none of those tiles collisions are a 5, and I've checked all 240 of them, it's going to come here, which we're going to set up to warp. So let me check real quick. What should happen is if I collect all the prizes, then I should it should reset right now. And to make it easy, I'm going to reset these guys' placements so that I don't have to worry about monsters to test it. I'm going to reset all placements, which is going to get rid of all the monsters on my screen. I just right-click, reset all placements. Now I can test my game, and I can go and okay. And what should happen is as soon as I get that last one, we should reset the game. And that's exactly what happens. Awesome. But resetting the game is not what I wanted to do. I want to warp, right? Well, we have a warp tile, don't we? So let's take a look at that warp tile for a second. This is a great time to synthesize some of the stuff that we know. Even if we don't know how to do a lot of code, we know that this is a warp to screen tile. Right here, this right here is what makes it warp to screen. So I could just copy this piece right here. And if I want, I can copy the arguments like this, Control C. And I'm going to paste them. Instead of reset, this is what I want to do, right? I want it to warp to whatever's in the variable warp to map, whatever's in the variable warp to screen. That's going to make it warp to the same screen that my warp does. So now when I check it, if all of those are gone, it will warp to the next screen. And let's test that and make sure it works. So now what's happening is I get this diamond, I get this diamond, I get this diamond, and now I'm going to warp to the next screen. So cool. Now we have two different ways to warp. We can warp if we've collected all the stuff. We can warp if I hit a tile that's a warp tile, and they both use the same thing. So I'm going to pull that piece of code up again. We're just going to run through exactly what this means. This is the part that we added right here. All the rest was the same. This is the part, and notice I put that I want to check to see if there's any prize tiles. So let's read this again like a sentence. I'm going to load Yanni with the number 0. So it's going to start at 0, and then it's going to do this loop. It's going to jump into this loop. So it was 0 before I started this loop. The first thing it's going to do is it's basically checking collision table. If you imagine this like a table in Excel, right? Like actually, really what we're looking at is this table right here. We're looking at a table that's this data. So when it's checking, if Yanni is 0, it's checking collision table plus 0. If Yanni is 1, it's checking collision table plus 1. If Yanni is 2, it's checking collision table plus 2, et cetera, et cetera. So what we're doing is we're checking right now collision table plus 0. Is it 5? Is this 5? Nope, it is not 5. So that means I need to keep going. If it was equal to 5, it would go here. But if not, it's going to keep going. I'm going to increase Yanni. I'm going to compare Yanni. Hey, Yanni, are you holding 240 yet? Nah, dude, I'm just holding the number 1. Okay, then that means if it's not equal to 240, I'm going to do the loop again. So now it equals 1. Load collision table plus Yanni, which is 1. So it's going to look at this. Is that a 5? It is not 5, so I'm going to keep going. If it was 5, I would come here. So I'm going to increase again. Now Yanni is 2. Hey, Yanni, are you 240 yet? Nope. Okay, go ahead and loop. Okay, so now I've gone through all of them. I get down to 39, 240. And I've seen that it has never been true that it's been 5. It has never been equal to 5. This has never happened. It's never gone here. So I'm at 240. Hey, Yanni, are you holding 240? Yeah. Oh, wait. This loops if I'm not equal to 240. It is 240? Awesome. Well, then let's keep going. That means we're ready. We found no prizes. We went through every single possibility, found no prizes. So now we're going to do this, and we're going to warp to the screen. Hopefully that makes sense as far as how this loop works using Yanni, our register, our Y register. We'll get into that again when we do a little bit of an ASM primer, which we haven't even done yet. So this is all sort of advanced stuff for those of you who've never touched code, but hopefully it makes at least some bit of sense. I've gone over it like 4 or 5 times, so hopefully it doesn't look as foreign. And it's just a couple lines of code. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, functionally 10 lines of code that we've added to make this work, where if I've collected all the prizes, it automatically goes to the next screen. Hopefully that's been a cool 20 minutes. I know that was a rough one. We'll move on to more cool stuff tomorrow.